Hi, thanks for watching. This is Jessie, and I am going to be reviewing The Lost Story by Meg Shaffer. Huge thanks to NetGalley for providing an eARC of this book. So, I don't even know how I'm supposed to review this book. I loved it. The thing is I feel like everything I say after Rafe and Jeremy went into the woods one day before school and didn't come back for 6 months is a spoiler. Because if I tell you why they didn't come back for 6 months, it's a spoiler. If I tell you what happened while they were gone, it's a spoiler. If I tell you, well, I guess, so after they come back, we go 15 years forward. Rafe is an artist, and Jeremy is the savior of lost girls. And he finds things that are lost, from necklaces to people. And he says that the reason he's able to do this is because he was once lost. And so he is in West Virginia or Kentucky. He's somewhere close to Ohio at the beginning of the book. And Emily drives down to see him because she is hoping that he will help her find her lost sister. And initially Jeremy is like, no. He's like, I'm too busy. She's like, well, here, just take her picture. And if you change your mind, let me know. So Emily goes home, and then Jeremy shows up, and he's willing to help her after all. And if I tell you the reason why Jeremy's willing to help Emily, it's a spoiler. Oh my goodness. So, like I said, this is going to be so hard to talk about. I loved... There were some concepts in here that I just absolutely adored. So, for example, the idea of a lost Virginia, and it's kind of like the Upside Down in Stranger Things, except it's more like purgatory, I guess you would call it. But this also created a hole in the story for me because it didn't quite match the rest of the world that it's in. And again, try not to spoil it. But despite that, like, it was still, it's an amazing story. The Goodreads says it's comparable to the Chronicles of Narnia. But what the author wrote in the back is that she actually saw Lord of the Flies next to the Chronicles of Narnia, and that gave her an idea of what to write, like what happens to these children like 20 years later. I think it was Narnia. It might have been another fantasy book, but she's a phenomenal writer. There are some parts in the book that are going to stick with me for the rest of my life, and I know it's not a finished product, so I'm not gonna quote anything, but there's a part in Lost Virginia where there's this lady in rags, and then she kind of crumbles down into a pile of leaves that blows away. And this is one of those things that will stick with me because the imagery was just so strong. There was a T. Kingfisher book, something about the Willows, because it was based off of Algernon's The Willows. But in that book, there was somebody who had they were down in a basement. The basement was flooded, so they were up to their midsection in water, and the narrator went down into the basement and thought that they were seeing hair floating in the water around this person, but it was actually their insides. And that stuck with me. So there's some imagery in here that are going to stick with me, like that particular imagery from T. Kingfisher. And it was a phenomenal story. It was precious. I thought it was precious. I've read some of the reviews on here, and some of them are super, super good, and some of them were like, no, this didn't work for me. Well, it worked for me. I loved the concept. about 3/4, a little bit more than 3/4 of the way through the book, I thought I had a grasp on what the ending was going to be, but I was wrong. So, well, that's interesting because usually once you're about 3/4 of the way through, you know what's going to happen. So I will say that the ending that I thought was coming was not the ending that I got, and that's not a bad thing. So, I'm not really sure what else to say about this without spoiling it. So I'm just going to read the blurb from Goodreads. It says, as boys, best friends Jeremy Cox and Rafe Howell went missing in a vast West Virginia state forest, only to mysteriously reappear 6 months later with no explanation for where they'd gone or how they'd survived. 15 years after their miraculous homecoming, Rafe is a reclusive artist who still bears scars inside and out but has no memory of what happened during those months. Meanwhile, Jeremy has become a famed missing persons investigator. With his uncanny abilities, he is the one person who can help vet tech Emily Wendell find her sister who vanished in the very same forest as Rafe and Jeremy. Jeremy alone knows the fantastical truth about the disappearances, for while the rest of the world was searching for them, the two missing boys were in a magical realm filled with impossible beauty and terrible danger. He believes it is there that they will find Emily's sister. However, Jeremy has kept Rafe in the dark since their return for his own scrutable reasons. But the time for burying secrets has come to an end as the quest for Emily's sister begins. The former Lost Boys must confront their shared past, no matter how traumatic the memories. Alongside the headstrong Emily, Rafe and Jeremy must return to the enchanted world they called home for 6 months, for only then can they get back everything and everyone they've lost. Emily has a rat. His name is Fritz, and oh my goodness, she carries him everywhere in her pocket. It's so adorable. So, as far as animal companions go, I know rats are not normally on a list of animal companions, but Fritz is pretty adorable. At least in my mind, he's pretty adorable. It might be because my son has a hamster, but, you know. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Go check out this phenomenal book, and like and subscribe below.